Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to be here this afternoon again to present you another case of study from our Urban Policies Association. I remember you that we are doing a lot of efforts in maintaining this kind of appointments, me, Oscar, and also Carlotta. And in this kind of speech, it is a friend of Carlotta that would like to present his own research and advancements. And I'm really glad to present himself to the audience. He's Roman Pomazan. He's an architect and urban planner from Ukraine, and he's a member of associations such as the ISOCARP and AVERE. And he will briefly present this title of speech, which is New Urban Agenda for Kyiv Metropolis. The speech, I'm just reading, the flyer investigates the current urban planning issues of Kyiv and mainly the hypothesis of decentralized Kyiv Metropolitan City based on the Metro Matrix Reticular planning. Well, I don't know exactly and in depth his research, so this is also an occasion to me to, comprehend which kind of work he has been carried on. And so I'm really, really appreciate and glad to present Roman for this speech. And yeah, he knows the rules of this game as usual. So I leave him the floor to make the presentation. Thank you again, Roman.
Thank you, Stefano. I can briefly present this research. It's not completed research yet. It's just a hypothesis for research that we started recently. It's focused on the rethinking the metropolitan governance and metropolitan management of large cities, capital cities, on example of Kiev, and studied urban issues occurred by usage of by legacy of the quite obsolete management that we have now. So can I start from the beginning now? Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
So I just swipe my slides, yeah, and that's all. Okay. So basically this hypothesis of decentralization of Kyiv city based on the two trends. One trend is a reference to the last territorial reform of Ukraine that covered the whole country except the capital itself. And this reform led to reorganization of the lowest level of communities. So instead of 10,000 villages and townships, Ukraine achieved around 3,000 amalgamated territorial hromadas now. But the most powerful city did not change at all. And the second trend is the arrangement of grassroots local communities within the metropolitan area that striking for their rights, observing and unveiling existing urban issues and conflicts on the ground of the local urban governance. As the state of the 2020 and two decades before, the Kyiv city has 10 districts, and these districts are inherited from the Soviet times, when administrative division was based on the basis of the members from the Communist Party. So as we can see from this, even from this map, geographically, all the districts are quite spread and covering large areas. Those now are quite are developed quite differently. Some of them are totally built up with high-rise neighborhoods, and other are covered by forests. But the main problem remains that these districts itself, they are not the body of a self-government. So they are just a territorial subdivision of the main metropolitan authority, and it covers the main issue. I just go through the main problems we described in this slide. So in general, before last year, no administration was at districts at all. District administrations were abolished in 2010 by the decree of the head of the Kyiv authority. One deputy of Kyiv City Council represents 25,000 citizens. For comparison, an average amalgamated rural Hromada has 15-20,000 citizens, and it has a mayor, a local deputies, and all administration needed to govern the community. But in Kiev, we have only one man who is responsible for 25,000 citizens. Districts are not a subject of participatory planning. They have no urban plans of development itself, no local budgets, and no self-governance. Since 2010, Kyiv mayor and the head of Kyiv city administration became the same person, and once while the head of Kyiv city authority is appointed by a president of Ukraine, the Kyiv mayor is elected, and this is a quasi governmental governance situation, that the same person is elected and appointed, and he is the head of the legislative body and the executive body. A lot of strategies for urban development of Kyiv were developed since 2008, but none of them has been implemented. Urban planning and district planning is de facto monopoly of the city urban planning department, and this fact affects the quality and quality of solutions and approaches involved in urban planning within the metropolitan area. And finally, urban planning does not rely on real economy shifts and urbanization and urban and big data, and do not represent demands of local communities. There is no connection with participatory planning at all. As for the 2020, we had next governance structure for the Kyiv city. There are two levels, very closely connected levels of the top administration: the mayor, municipal departments, city council, and 10 districts. And from in the same time, we had grassroots self-organized bodies, NGOs, associations of communities. Those represents the territorial organization communities that calls in Ukrainian OSN, and counted in number of 182. They gather people from areas like one micro district or a rural neighborhood or a street. So there is no strict differentiation how to establish this self-organization community. And around 2,500 associations of home owners, big high-rise residential apartment blocks. Top-down governance structure is quite over-concentrated in Kiev. Thus, the mayor is the same person of the head Kyiv city authority. The president has an imperative mandate and he appoints the head of Kyiv city authority. There is also strong lobby of financial groups and construction development among 220 deputies of city council that leads to the concentrated decision-making power in hands of the mayor, representatives of his party in city council, and affiliated deputies. Volodymyr Klitschko has been elected the second round for next 4 years to manage the city, and he prolonged the politics of the previous times. So let me show some examples of the bottom-up self-governance. So here we have around 182 self-organization communities, around 30 associations of homestead owners. Those unite predominantly rural neighborhoods, and around 100 NGOs that represent local communities too. One interesting fact that during the Revolution of Dignity, Kyiv, Ukraine in general, but in Kyiv especially, experienced the grassroots movement of local communities. It was caused by the total collapse of metropolitan management system when ruling elites escaped the city, seizing public budgets, and the city was crowded by criminal gangs to support the president's side and to disseminate chaos in neighborhoods. To protect themselves, local communities organized themselves and created the militia, local militia, and local executive councils. From that time, majority of these self-organized hramadas are working on their activities and manage urban issues on the local level. Нужно закончить тут. Окей. Мы сейчас онлайн. Last year, Kyiv metropolitan area experienced vibrant changes in shaping territorial hramadas around Kiev. A lot of suburbs worked on the aggregation adjacent villages and understanding their responsibilities, how they can self-organize themselves according to a new law, to new urban agenda. But this process did not affect the capital itself. So all territorial hramadas around Kiev has no real instrument to work together to on the metropolitan issues of the whole territory. While around 1 million population commute every day from the adjacent areas, from the half of the Kiev region to the capital, inside the capital. It caused huge transport problems, impact on air pollution, on ecology, and economy losses. From the history of Kyiv local governance, we found that initially Kyiv was inhabited by different tribes and clans. Thus, self-governance history starts from tribal self-governance and settlement organization. Presumably, this tribal custom tradition reflects in the de jure German-like law system of Ukraine, that de facto in English-like and changed every year by newcoming modern tribes. Every territorial hromada community, or verv, as it was called in Old Slavic, had own local law codex. From the ancient times, Kyiv develops itself as several rural settlements and kings enforced citadel. Later, armies, garrisons, industrial settlements, and suburbia differentiated them. In principle, these settlements remain to current to modern era, and the main of them are the most powerful downtowns has Pechersk, Podil, and the old city center with Kreshchatik. So, as we know from the history, initially Kyiv area had had tribal self-governance code, and after with the centuries becoming the city of center of the province in the Russian Empire, as it was in the last century. Kyiv was ruled by general governor and was divided into several districts that have own representatives in city council Duma. In 1917 there were 8 ward districts in Kiev. Now I want to go to the issues of the modern Kyiv urban metropolitan development. The first issue we see is the obsolete district division that inherited from the Soviet times. The second issue is the inefficient city administration for the metropolitan scale that cannot cope with the accelerated economy changes of the digital era. In other words, too concentrated in the one place, in the one department, quantity of officials just cannot cope with the too fast changed and rapidly growing economy and requests from different sides, fields of urban governance. The third issue we describe is the megalopolis and suburbia do not cooperate in this strategic field. There is no real instruments for cooperation or agglomeration between the city and adjacent suburbia. All these issues reflect in the huge traffic jams from the suburbia to the city core, in long delayed constructions and frozen construction sites. Those are plenty among the city, throughout the city, and quite low levels of the livability index, ecological health index, and traffic index. Going deeper, we try to understand what size of the local community is the most understandable, most feasible for self-governing. What is the size? What is the ideal size of self-government? And we started to research maps of different resources that use own division of the city for their businesses, to develop their businesses. Here we have urban density map, and we can see here that the urbanization of the city is quite dispersed. It's not even connected now. So in fact, we have a lot of small cities within the large metropolitan area. Taxi service map of Uklon, local taxi provider, shows us that the most convenient type of neighborhood division is very different from the official one, and this type of division reflect the real state of understanding the limits of every neighborhood area. Gated communities map shows us the trend how the city obtains new micro gated cities, and this trend also affects the whole governance issue. It shows us that there are more and more high-rise dense residential developments, gated and guarded by local departments, and they try to protect, to border itself from the wall city core. Cities and metropolitan governance affects, on our opinion, the next fields. The first, offensive development in green fields. It's one of the biggest issue when construction developers use green fields. They look at green fields as a new areas for the large-scale development, not respecting the nature, not respecting last islands of greenery remained in the city, not respecting the common community property. Public space design issues caused by monopoly of municipal departments that push their design solution in public space sphere, in fact blocking any attempts of local design of design projects made by local citizens. Infrastructure collapse caused by obsolete and maintained infrastructure, over centralized water heating and power supply system led to occasional blackouts and breakdowns, as it was last year and the year before. Permanent conflicts around the informal construction, weak participatory planning, that in fact is represented only by public hearings when the project is already designed, and the only thing for the people is to do just to hear and say yes or not, but in fact they cannot affect any design solution. And transport development issues, those are represented predominantly in the really strong car-oriented development that ban light transport development strategies and bicycle development strategies in a way of just profanating bicycle lanes tenders and making different kind of obstacles for bicycle lanes construction. Here we show several examples of the construction in greenfields in Kyiv area. The first of them is the construction of next to ecosite of Horbachiha that is called also Kyiv Amazonia. There are two real estate projects. One of them, Rosenevska Haven, is already under construction, and it threatened to devastate this amazing island of the wild nature next to the river. The next one is the case of ecosite Osakor Key, and the attempt of large construction company to build it up with concrete jungles, practically devastating this amazing emerald island within the city with the artificial desert. The last one case that we show is the construction, the conflict around the construction of tourbillon housing estate that is going to be built in the Protasiv Yar, the ecosite next to the railway station and city center. To build this high-rise residential development, developer proposed to cut several thousand of trees and to concrete the pavement several thousand square meters. Let me show one more issues in design, urban design. In general, Kyiv has the department for urban design that is developing master plan every 5 years, making change them. In fact, these changes are occurred only by they forced by the intents of business plans of construction companies. And next lower level of the master plan is the district master plan, and here we have here we see district master plans of the north part of the Kyiv, and we see here that they are not connected. They even not connected. This is why every this micro district master plan is developed only for purpose of future business development. And this is the core issue of urban planning of metropolitan areas in Ukraine, that we don't have the common vision for the whole districts, how they gonna be developed. We have only visions, master plans, only for specific districts where business come to build new houses. This non-systematic ad hoc urban planning relied on construction business plans only leads to such cases like we can see on this slide. Too dense high-rises with no sunlight, neglected urban scale in the city center, no places for car parking, and a lot of more problems. Considering all these issues, we met the Metro Matrix approach of developed by Pedro Ortiz and Politecnico di Milano. We try to understand how we can change the system, how we can develop another way of urban management involving local communities and relying on comprehensive urban data and opposing and addressing the biodiversity crisis. And we cope up with the idea of with the hypothesis of creation of Kyiv metropolitan area that is going to be consisted of several municipalities and several hundreds of hromadas, as we saw already on maps. Those should be collaborated one with other under the umbrella of the Kyiv Metropolitan Authority. So we proposed, in our hypothesis, we proposed the three-level system of metropolitan governance instead of one level: designation of green areas with a special status, designation of industrial zones for development and innovative projects under the supervision of business corporations. Rural communities should restrict the construction and transit of transport, systematization of urban data, self-governance and participation, land ownership, and master plan areas and policies, public health and security areas, local identity, emphasize on local identity, compact urban development, pedestrian walk distances 5 and 10 minutes, city, transit-oriented development. Engagement of residents in the planning and creating their city. Analysis of the urban big data and strategic planning of the metropolis and agglomeration. This slide shows how we can see the cooperation of the Kyiv Metropolis and the Kyiv region, adjacent to amalgamated Hromadas, under umbrella of Kyiv Agglomeration Advisory Council, as it existed in London, Paris, or Rome. Three-level metropolitan governance has different scales of governance, responsibilities, urban planning, etc. Thus, we propose to create to establish parliament for each metropolitan district or municipality, and to give a certain amount of self-governance to every hromada, every small neighborhood. One difference that we propose for this metropolitan division is the typology of metropolitan hromadas, the lowest level. Why we came to this solution? I think that the differentiation needed in order to divide approaches of management to different types of areas. In general, analyzing the whole city core, the whole city area, we figured out 4 types of hromadas: urban, with a dense urbanization, dense residential areas; rural, with a low-rise development and vast inclusions of greenery; green areas with nature habitats, water bodies, and also parks and heritage ensembles; and brownfields, continuing rusty belts that cut the city to the separate blocks. And these brown fields are going to be the main place for innovations, for changes, and for experimental mixed-use development. Thus, we have 4 types of the local community self-organization that we're going to propose to the city. A metro hromada designation The Metropolitan Hromada is designated as an administrative division with a specific part of self-governance, emphasized participatory planning and community land maintenance. Metropolitan Hromada is a designated administrative division with a specific part of self-governance, emphasized participatory planning and community land maintenance. Metropolitan Hromada represents a single region for election ward, public health and security, urban development, tenure, cadastre map, etc. Designation criteria of Hromadas are the urban landscape boundaries, river, hills, roads or highways, natural habitats, urban development typologies, population, authentic local name, local community cohesion. Differentiation of Hromadas on urban, rural, green and brown fields types, as was stated before. And one more point, that green and brownfield Hromadas have the distinct area maintenance and land ownership by default, like industrial and innovation parks, industrial corporate zones, natural parks and reservates. Here we show examples of metropolitan division throughout the world on examples of London, Hong Kong, New York, Warsaw, Singapore, Paris, and finally we come up with the metropolitan division of Kiev, mapping out all the possible compact areas. We found 245 Hromadas. 95 of those are urbanized, 55 brownfield, 38 rural and 57 green. Those 245 Hromadas have to be aggregated, united into 24 districts. We see that it can be 24 districts or municipalities with their own mayors, parliaments and executive bodies. But the one differentiation is that 3 of these districts are totally consisting of green areas. So there are Kyiv Islands, West forests and East forests. And we see that these areas cannot be governed as a average municipalities. So we propose to administrate them with a park and heritage board, a special body that will include scientists, not only politicians, but also scientists and NGOs that are focused on nature conservation in order to protect these areas, to develop them in a right way, in a cooperative way with the culture and with the economic needs. Then we break down every type of Hromadas and we count them and show them on the map. So here we have urban Hromadas, brownfield Hromadas. We see how they built the city. rural hromadas quite scattered around the outskirts, and green hromadas. Those penetrate the city on the Dnieper River axis. The hromada split, let's call it hromada split. We figured out that actually 62% of the hromadas are green, and it means that 62% of the Kyiv area for now officially is the greenfield area, and it should be protected for the future generations and for the biodiversity stability. 18% 18% of the city covers the rural hromadas, and the urban hromadas cover no, sorry, 18%. 18% are urban hromadas, 9% rural hromadas, and 11% brownfield hromadas. Thus, green hromadas are the main, the majority of the territory of the metropolitan area. And finally, we developed a sketch of metropolitan transit area development of hubs, transport hubs for the metropolitan area, based on the existing hubs and adding to them some local transport spots that are already needed in order to help the city and the metropolitan area to cope with the current traffic jams, with a quite complex transport situation. So thank you for the invitation. I'm finishing my presentation, and this is the last slide that we have to show.
Thank you to you, Roman. Thank you. It was a long presentation. You will reach more or less, it's 55 minutes, so you have a long one, but it was quite nice. And I think it was so difficult to make argumentation on that side, because you were not talking about only physical things, but you were discussing about system of governance. You talk about the history of planning, you talk about the way of planning, the governance representations, the elections, the kind of institutions. So it was huge. And thank you again for your participation. I have to honestly state that during the previous presentation, we didn't get in touch within the fields of research, which is the governance. So the local possibility to be represented, and the kind of utilization of the powers and the authorities of the kind of communities, and how they can, pursue the best way of making land use planning, being represented in their neighborhoods and facilities and so on. I think that the examples that you bring inside London, New York City, Singapore, and other kind of cities has a long tradition in doing this kind of bottom-up representation. So using the powers and decentralizing the kind of utilizations of these powers in order to make citizens aware of their possibilities to being part of the urban planning process and decision making. So I know from my sides that also, post-Soviet urban planning parts of Eastern Europe are still, affected by this kind of restructuration and management of this issue. So I think that your research is so promising in these fields, and there is, a huge amount of space for, I think, suggesting something which could be helpful in the future. So nothing else to say. I don't know if you, Carlotta, would like to add something, or Oscar. Yeah. Or if there are certain questions. We have 6 participants among us, so they are few, only 2, I think. But as I introduced you, Roman, we will have more visualization on the, when we will post the video on our YouTube channel. So I just close up. So thank you again, Roman. I don't see
Thank
Oscar.
you.
Can you confirm there are no questions from the followers? I don't think so. No. Okay. So we can close. Thank you. And so hope to see you soon, Roman. Let's stay in touch for your future research, because we will be proud also to demonstrate if you have new advancements in a couple of months, or when you think that this research has made significant steps forward, we will be able to present it again. So thank you all to all the followers, and see you soon. Have a nice weekend, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Roman.
Bye bye.